Hey, Jim. My name is Dan from Texas. I was reaching out to you because my parents are working on estate planning with lawyers in the state of Ohio, and they were discussing the idea of a heritage trust, which was a name I hadn't heard before. So I was initially a little bit skeptical, thinking maybe a name that I hadn't heard on your website or heard you talk about might be some sort of a marketing ploy. But looking into websites, there isn't a ton of information on it, but a couple individual lawyer websites for estate lawyers do seem to mention it as a type of trust where the trustee is the beneficiary and they manage all the assets, but there's a distribution trustee who manages all the distributions from that trust. So we're kind of in a situation with myself and two siblings, and everyone's got a good head on their shoulders, and no one's really struggling financially. And so my parents are kind of considering a three-way sibling a heritage trust. Just wanted to see if you thought that that was a good idea or if you had any other information on the topic. Thank you.
All right. Great question. Wonderful to hear that you're in this fortunate position, your parents and siblings and you. Good job to everybody involved, right? People should be congratulated when they're successful to this degree. And so good job to everybody. Uh, Lawyers are funny and trusts are funny in that there's a lot of marketing involved there, right? It's a competitive business, right? I mean, there's lots of attorneys in a given state, and they want your trust business. And there's only so many people that need trusts. There's lots of people that don't have that much money, and only a few people that have enough money and concerns that they need a trust. So you want to capture that business. And the way you do that is through effective marketing. And a particularly effective way to market is to come up with a new name for a trust. And so I'm always seeing new names for trusts. And so this one was new to me, a heritage trust. Well, I Googled it as well, just like you did, and read up on what people were calling a heritage trust. And it's just another irrevocable trust. Okay. Which are the ones that are used to ensure that your wishes are carried out after you're dead, right? It provides asset protection to you when you put money in an irrevocable trust because you can't take the money back out. But mostly it's an estate planning tool. And I'm a big fan of estate planning, especially if you've got enough money that you have to start worrying about estate planning, estate tax issues, more so than just who's going to take care of your kids if you die young and who's going to get your stuff. And, you're putting together an I love you that goes to your spouse afterward. I love you, Will. Maybe you don't need a big fancy trust. But, for those of us who have enough to worry about estate taxes, or those of us who have complicated, blended family kind of pictures or concerns with son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, then, you need a trust to deal with all that. So the definition I saw for a heritage trust was simply an irrevocable trust, where you're trying to hose your in-laws if they get divorced, right? That you want your money to go to your grandkids, not that no good son-in-law in the event that he leaves your daughter. That's a heritage trust. Well, that's an easy provision to put into any sort of irrevocable trust. Whether you call it a heritage trust or a dynasty trust or whatever you want to call this sort of a thing. It's just, putting your wishes into the irrevocable trust that you're leaving behind to your kids. Now, trusts are governed by state law, so they're state specific. You need to see an estate planning attorney in your state. But as a general rule, the beneficiary and the trustee that controls distributions, not the investments, but distributions, often has to be a different person. For example, our irrevocable trust, its particular flavor is called an IDGT, Intentionally Defective Grantor Trust, and a specific type of that is a SLAT, a Spousal Life Access Trust, or whatever it stands for. I think that's what it is. Anyway, the point is this trust is an irrevocable trust. The beneficiary is my spouse. The investment trustees are my spouse and I. But there is a distribution trustee that is not a beneficiary. Happens to be a relative of ours, but whose job it is to determine the distributions. And then there's a trust protector you can put in place in case your trustee sucks, and you can change the trustee. But the bottom line is the distribution trustee could not be Katie or me. had to be somebody separate. And it sounds like that's probably the case in your state with this particular type of trust. But the bottom line, you go in, you talk to the attorney about what you want to happen. They tell you what's possible under the law, and you try to get as close as you can to what you want with what's possible. We all want this super flexible thing that costs nothing and is super easy to maintain. And that's not always the case, but you do the best you can. So hopefully that's helpful to you. I wouldn't say, a heritage trust, oh, you need to run. This is something terrible. Someone's going to scam you. It's just another name for, the provisions in an irrevocable trust.
The hosts of The White Coat Investor are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is for your entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.